I would like to welcome Mr. Avinash Krishnan, Director, Conservation Science and CEO, Rocha, India. He's a large mammal ecologist currently, studying in animal interactions in southern India. He's a qualified wildlife biologist working towards the conservation of endangered wildlife, and he pioneered the use of camera trap technology to document small mammal diversity in Bannerghatta National Park. And his topic for today's discussion is from there itself, Bannerghatta 560083, Forgotten Forest, Fragile Fences. Please welcome.
Firstly, it's a lot of pleasure because ma'am just said I'm an amazing speaker. I don't know how much of justice I'm going to do to that, but I'll try and wrap up my talk for 7 minutes. Firstly, thank you, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity. And of course, it's a privilege and an honor to be speaking in front of Professor Sukumar for the first time, someone who I looked up while studying elephants. For the record, I'm not going to speak about elephants because I realize there's a lot of elephants in the room already. But I'll also just like to make a quick mention as to my association with the Parthasarathi's. Intrinsically, of course, just like Tash mentioned, I don't know. I was probably it's been definitely a long time since he existed, and his work was amazing when I listened to all the great renowned conservationists who I look up to when I was at the lunch yesterday. But my association with the Parthasarathi's is through Hamsini, and I have to mention that. There's a pleasure of mentioning it. Hamsini was one of our students in Bannerghatta when she came to do an internship, and we explored leopards. I think you also contributed to the first informal survey of leopards and their conflict parameters. So that's how I was associated with the Parthasarathy, and definitely an opportunity again to speak here. So my talk is going to talk about this landscape and something that I've personally worked for close to 17 years now. I started off as a nature volunteer, like I see a lot of my other colleagues from different organizations like Rahul and Ashwin who are here. We all started in this landscape primarily because it was close to Bangalore. But there are important aspects to its conservation which is severely overlooked even as I speak. So just to highlight 2 quotes, Robert Frost said, "Good fences make good neighbors." And the famous ecologist, naturalist said that, "And into the forest I go to lose my mind and to find my soul." Now, these quotes are very inspirational. It kind of motivates us to do our bit and also contribute to the larger conservation ethos that all of us are trying to speak. But let me come back to Bangalore. So we are here right now, and we all celebrate. Most of us are from Bangalore. We call ourselves very proud Bangaloreans. We are part of the 1.36 crore population occupying roughly about 700 square kilometers. This area keeps extending after every government takes charge. And we're a cool city, primarily because of the altitude and also because of the cosmopolitan culture of the demographics here. And Bangalore is also known for its several heritage sites, the Cubbon Parks, the Lal Bags, of course, the Vidhan Sauda. But there's one natural heritage site that people don't understand, or they're aware of it, but they don't understand its value or its importance. So when you do a quick search on Google and you type, well, you don't get this on Google, I just modified that, so apologies. So when you type this word, Bannerghatta, you get 2 immediate responses. You see a lot of traffic, because Bannerghatta road is notable for its traffic. A lot of people seldom come to our camp because they say traffic ide dura barakagala. And the other thing is the Bannerghatta Zoo, which a lot of us have visited in our childhood, especially when I first came to this landscape when I was a little boy, was to go to the Bannerghatta Zoo. So these 2 acronyms, or synonyms to the landscape, doesn't do justice, because Bannerghatta, if you look at the Mysore Gazette, it actually defines this park as Banna Iruva Ghatta, which actually means colorful hills, which is kind of surprising when you see these 2 images. They don't represent any hills. And the other definition through the Mysore Gazette is it was filled with bunny trees, which is basically Prosopis julifera. You don't find cinerea anymore. So Bannerghatta as a forest was pretty much a cold forest. It was a forest that was largely used for firewood production. People used to cut these forests and use the coal for local livelihood reasons. But if you look at it as a landscape, Bannerghatta is integral to the Mysore Elephant Reserve or the larger definition, the Brahmagiri-Nilgiri Eastern Ghat landscape, which is what Tarsh had shown as this map. So it sits at the northern tip of the Eastern Ghats in the state of Karnataka. It's roughly about 64,000 acres of land, which comprises of, the typical optimal habitats for these elephants that we're talking about, the moist deciduous, dry deciduous kind of habitat. And within that is a 700 hectare XC2 conservation site, which is what a lot of us keep saying, Bannerghatta, which is the zoo. So it's not the forest. The zoo doesn't represent the forest, and the forest doesn't represent the zoo. They're two different entities. It's just that the zoo's inside in the park area. And by the way, the name is changed to Bangalore Bannerghatta Biological Park. So it's not called the Bannerghatta Biological Park anymore as well. So coming back to the ecosystem, like I said, is classic of the Eastern Ghat landscape, the typical Deccan Plateau landscape. You don't have any perennial rivers, but it's known for some very old rock forms like the dolmens, the low elevated peaks, the discontinuous chains, a very iconic habitat, perhaps the last remaining deciduous forest in southern India. It varies in terms of altitude. I'm just giving a quick snippet of this landscape so that when I talk about the issues, there's some relevance. When it comes to its wildlife or its biodiversity, not many people know, because everyone thinks that there are about 2,000 animals in the zoo, but they don't know that this forest is home to a lot more than what we actually think. So we have about 22 terrestrial mammals, and this was only assessed in 2019. So a park that was started in the year 1970 is probably one of the oldest protected areas in the state. Only till 2019 did we know that we had about 22 terrestrial mammals. We have about 40 leopards that kind of occupy that area, about 128 woody tree species, 117 naval faunal species. So a host of biodiversity that was very recently recorded or continuing to be understood. So in terms of people, we have about 1 million people that live around this protected area, various socio-economic statuses, various caste demographics. So it's a very different heterogeneous community that you're actually dealing with. So why I'm saying this, because when you're imparting conservation, it can't be a one rule fits all. You need to look at all these other parameters. So one of the major concerns is the very classification of the forest, because the forestry department has very different ways of managing these ecosystems when it comes to their habitat protection. Then when it comes to the conflict aspect, I normally don't like to speak about this, but just to put a figure there are about 147 lakh rupees of taxpayers' money used every year, and Bangalore division or Bangalore circle is where Bannerghatta is the highest in terms of conflict. This was from the recent annual report by the Karnataka Forest Department. So conflict levels are the highest, and where your taxpayer money goes there in terms of excretion and things like that. Recent studies have shown that the forest is obviously getting degraded because of change in land use and many other pressures, and of course the interaction between zoo animals and wild animals, because both of them are nestled in the same space. There's the possibility of transfer of zoonotic diseases. So obviously for all of such a multidimensional landscape, you obviously need a multidimensional, integrated, holistic approach to resolve concerns. So something that's integrated with people, forests and wildlife is what we're actually trying to look at. So I represent an organization that's been working in this landscape for the last 2 decades. It's probably the oldest organization in this landscape, and for us the focal area of our operations is the Bannerghatta Hosur landscape of southern India, and these are for all the corporate people who like to support us. We have all these 12 AATG, CSR and whatnot. So this is the only slide I might have on elephants. It's the first time I'm not talking about elephants, but nonetheless we have about 1,175 elephants that occupy this Bannerghatta Hosur landscape, and this is obviously done by Professor Sukumar's team as part of the annual census that they do on elephants. And roughly 300 elephants that come into this area between these connected landscape have conflict with people, and I mentioned those figures. And we have this Asian Elephant Conservation Program, which happens to be the longest study of elephants in the Eastern Ghats, spanning about 3 generations. So when it comes to the conflict aspect, there are stake in both cases. Elephants die, people die. So we believe that we need to beef up the mitigation efforts, whether it's developing primary response. So these are not reinventing the system, right? These are systems that are always there across the country. We have enough and more knowledge, experienced people like Sukumar have done enough and more work when it comes to managing human-elephant conflict. So what we're trying to do is to try and bring these best practices to this landscape, which is very often ignored. The other issue is the wildlife corridors. Now, this is a very popular term and very crucial from a conservation standpoint, especially when you're linking habitats. We have 3 corridors out of the 18 corridors in South India, and 2 corridors connect the Bannerghatta forest with other forests, and one of that is impaired. It has absolutely no connectivity, and there's conflict associated. And we have also done some research in the past. We've recently published a paper where we found out that 9 mammals extensively use these corridors and are very vital in, for their movement between habitats and for genetic viability. So what we believe is to augment land, create some awareness, and try and prevent threats that kind of affect these corridors. So this is a very crucial issue which a lot of us discuss and is very pertinent to the Bannerghatta area and also related to conflict. So when we did studies in the past, we realized that women have a greater intolerance to human-elephant conflict. It's largely because they experience the conflict the most, and they see the husbands getting killed or trampled, loss of revenue. So we've set up with Mr. Rahul of WWF, we're trying to empower women in terms of giving them alternative livelihoods, empowering their opportunities to gain an income so that they're not entirely dependent on agriculture and associated parameters, which kind of causes that insecurity for them. And through soft skill training, something like what the Lantana model that Tash spoke about, we're trying to equip them with more soft skills by setting up centers so that they can have a better lease of life in terms of their financial and food security. This I mentioned earlier because you just saw the tiger census results. We have 2 tigers. Kind of surprising, probably the only protected area in the whole of the country, which is a metropolitan city that has got a tiger in this landscape. So, but when we did studies in the past, we realized there are about 18, 19 species that we do not know anything about, including the cryptic species like the honey badger, whose local conservation status is not known. We have several issues when it comes to managing these animals, and we need more advancements in terms of research and knowledge and monitoring mechanisms to kind of monitor and ensure that these animals are preserved as well, and not just focus on the charismatics like the tiger and the elephant. We work very closely with farmers and especially with the farming practices, because we realize that these farmers are subsistence farmers, and when cases of conflict or human-elephant conflict happens, their entire food stake is under food is under stake. So we have a project with IIT Bombay where we're trying to revitalize the farming practices, trying to make farming more sustainable, because apart from conflict, we also know about 40% of their agricultural revenue or food security is affected by several stochastic factors. And so we're trying to see if those stochastic factors can be improved by better ways of agriculture, like improved seeds and sustainable ways in which they can offset the otherwise losses that they incur by the virtue of being in this landscape. We also do a lot of restoration work with the forest department, and this is primarily because we want to see this park area to be a better habitat for wildlife. We believe that if the habitats are intact, we have lesser instances of conflict. So a lot of eco-restoration project and land use management with the park authorities to ensure that they do the right, follow the right techniques, because if you look at this landscape, we cannot make Bannerghatta more than what it is, and we cannot obviously add more forests and because of the proximity to a large city like Bangalore. But we're trying to see if this a lot of degraded land like old quarries, old mining sites can be eco-restored, and a lot of deemed forests that can be augmented back into the protected area, so that we can at least increase the virtue of what the park area is by at least 3 square kilometers. That's a goal that we have. Now this is the interesting bit. Now all of this sounds nice, but when there's no money, you can't do anything about it. So I was told by ma'am that a lot of interesting people, don't be deceived by my appearance, I don't dress like this normally, but I said, man told me that a lot of H&I people are here, so I thought, why not?
This coat though.
Why not?
Look at my daughter, look what she's wearing, and you're dressed up, in a different way.
Anyway, so we have this field study center model, which means that we sit in the heart of the problem. So we have a campus which all of you all are free to come and visit, and we have a very small team of people who are very passionate. All of us have been, some of them are here, Dilip, Harry and all of them, and we have a very long stinted presence in that landscape. And we believe that being part of this landscape, we're part of the problem. We're not looking at all of this as projects, but something that's very deep rooted to the culture, the landscape, the ecosystem and things like that. So we follow this, what we call as a field study center model. This is the typical corporate jargon, I would say. What we'd like to do in the long term is to obviously spread, expand, look at more conducive areas to, ensure our work is there, and also to, work with a lot of groups, because living in a city like Bangalore and having a park like Bannerghatta and all the other social issues, it's important that all of us join hands, and I personally believe it. I think it's not something that one organization, one individual can do in a lifetime. So for us, we're looking at a lot more collaborations, and what that means is, you can help us in so many different ways. Anything possibly, right? Not just money, but your time, your effort, your furniture, your students, or whatnot, and the different ways in which you can help. And so some of our key projects right now is this, and we have a 5-core plan for this landscape, and we believe that some of the support that can come from interested people could be, rightly utilized for these specific projects. I'll just put the figure there, but I'd just like to play this video which we dedicate, just to give you a visual. I didn't have any videos, and I thought I'll just play this little tribute to one of our mentors, Ajay Desai, who also studied elephants. Just thought to give you a visual glimpse of how this park looks.
ಹಸಿರಿನ ಸಿರಿಯು ನಮ್ಮ ಉಸಿರ ಜೀವಾಳವು ದೇವರೇ ಕಂಡು ಒಪ್ಪಿದ ನಿಲ್ದು ತನಗಿಂತ ಮಿಗಿಲು ಪರಿಸರ
Bannerghatta, Bengaluru Asti. Save Bannerghatta.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for that extremely insightful presentation and video. It's actually, when I spoke to you, Avinash, I mean, I had not met you, even though you knew my daughter.
Yes, but I've heard a lot about you.
It's just shocking.
Yeah, just one mention, ma'am. I need to thank all these people.
Yes, let's thank everybody. See, there are so many people who've contributed to your great work, right?
Not to be deceived by the number of logos. There are a lot of internal things, but yeah, we're very fortunate to Professor Sukumar, who started the Elephant Project in Bannerghatta, and of course many such institutions and organizations, donors, small, big. So it doesn't mean that these people have given us a lot of money, but they've contributed us in so many different ways to stand here and be able to present our work. So a great thanks to all these wonderful souls that have supported our work. Thanks.
Thank you again, Avinash. The beautiful part is that we have this wonder of nature just round the corner. I guess it hardly takes about, to some people, it's just literally in their backyard. And I was talking to Harshita of, I work with the Bangalore Political Action Committee, which we'll speak about in the next session, that every Bangalorean needs to know this, and everybody needs to acknowledge this. And one of the things that when we have conversations about a lot of other civic engagement is most of Bangalore's population is a floating population. In the sense, if you ask how many people in Bangalore have been born and brought up in Bangalore, you're not going to find many. And what happens is the ownership to the city is very critical for us to build a sense of belonging, and that something needs to be done about this. So that's where the engagement. What do you think the top 3 things that we can do as every Bangalore city, because you are 13.8 million people, right? That's what your statistics are showing. So how do we engage? How do we do this better?
Well, I think in my slides I also said for each particular issue there's an Rocha way forward. So if a lot of people can contribute to that, would be very specific to the issues.
It's about
that's
specific projects,
yeah, because
as well
there are
as
specific
long-term
issues.
projects.
Yeah, so there are specific issues that have short-term and long-term solutions. So I think people can contribute that way. And secondly is to just to spread the awareness, because what I understand being a Bangalorean myself, we're a very eco-conscious society, at least the ones that are from Bangalore. We have a huge history of people living in Bangalore who are extremely environmental conscious and who are very preservation oriented in their actions. So I think they should take onus of this park. This park is like a community park in some sense. I don't literally mean community park, but it's like something like a resident welfare association in different parts of Bangalore, right? So I think a lot of us can participate with organizations, governments, and be part of the conservation movement, which I think is very possible, because I believe that I think we can use Bannerghatta as a model, because most protected areas will end up being like this if it is not managed well, right? Because
You're
Bannerghatta is
right, yeah.
So I think it's a better way to start here and make this as a model. I've seen similar models in Bombay where you have a lot of citizen action when it comes to managing Sanjay Gandhi National Park with the leopards and things like that. I think there needs to be a rising awareness in people in Bangalore to be participative of the efforts taken, not just by us, but many such agencies that are doing thing. And like I said, some of these projects need a lot of collaborations, and I think we'd like to see that. We see a lot of agencies and organizations based out of Bangalore. We have the Indian Institute of Science, we have several such agencies whose natural mandate is to do social and conservation or environment related issues. I think if all of us can collaborate and so close to you, it's logistically convenient, it's might not really require a lot of money, so many different ways of doing integrated work in
and we are the IT capital of the country, and
course.
I mean it is indeed our responsibility. And Bannerghatta, close to the park itself, there's a lot of tech, it's a tech suburb itself that is there.
I told them to go and stay 1 or 2 days there, do some work for them, and all of us can practice this. They welcome it, and it is excellent motivation experience for them.
Thank you so much. And I think, as a corporate offsite, just in terms of an experience, we must definitely make sure that happens, Avinash,
Sure,
and we'll
sure.
surely work together for
It'll
that.
be a pleasure.
Thank you again.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.